Let me ask you something. Have you ever trusted someone? I mean, really trusted them. And then one day you find out they were planning your destruction the entire time? Not behind your back for a week. Not for a month. For years. Because in the year 09 AD, the most powerful empire the world had ever seen trusted one man. They raised him. They educated him. They gave him citizenship. They gave him rank. They called him one of their own. And that man used every single thing they taught him to lead 20,000 of their soldiers into a forest where not one of them would walk out alive. This is not a movie. This is not fiction. This actually happened. And honestly, it's one of the greatest betrayals in human history. All right, so to understand how insane this story is, you need to understand how powerful Rome was at this point. We're talking about the year 09 AD. Rome was basically the United States, China, and the British Empire all rolled into one government, one military, controlling everything from Spain all the way to the Middle East, from the coast of North Africa up to the edges of Germany. And the guy in charge? Emperor Augustus. This man had turned Rome from a broken republic into the most dominant force on the planet. Armies feared Rome. Kings bowed to Rome. If you were a small tribe somewhere in Europe and you saw Roman soldiers marching toward your village, you had two options: surrender or die. That was the deal. And for decades, it worked. Now, Rome had this habit. Whenever they conquered a new territory, they didn't just send soldiers. They sent politicians, governors, administrators, and they would show up and say, "Okay, you belong to Rome now. Here are the taxes you owe. Here are the laws you follow. And if you don't like it, we'll crucify you on the side of the road as a reminder for your neighbors." Charming, right? So Rome looks at this place called Germania, modern-day Germany. Wild forests, fierce tribes, people who painted their faces for battle and answered to no king. And Rome says, yeah, we're taking that too. And the guy they picked to make that happen was a man named Publius Quinctilius Varus. Now, here's the thing about Varus. He wasn't a warrior. He was a politician. The guy had married into Augustus's family. He was connected. He was powerful. But he was the kind of leader who thought you could govern a war zone with paperwork and arrogance. He showed up in Germania and immediately started treating the tribes like they were beneath him. Heavy taxes, Roman courts, crucifixions for anyone who pushed back. He treated these proud, independent warriors like they were children who needed to be taught how to behave. And that was his first mistake, because these people had their own gods, their own laws, their own way of life, and they did not appreciate some Roman politician telling them what to do. But Varus didn't care. In his mind, Rome was invincible, and anyone who disagreed would learn that lesson the hard way. Except the lesson was about to go the other direction, and the teacher was someone Varus never saw coming. Okay, so this is where the story gets personal, and honestly, kind of heartbreaking. There was a boy, a Germanic boy, son of a powerful chief of a tribe called the Carusi. His name was Arminius. Now, when Rome conquered your tribe, they had this policy. They would take the children of the chiefs, the sons, the heirs, and they would ship them to Rome, not to kill them. No, something smarter than that. They would raise them, educate them, train them as Roman soldiers, teach them Latin, teach them Roman law, Roman culture, Roman warfare. The idea was simple. You take a barbarian child and you turn him into a Roman, and then one day you send him back to his people. And now your former enemy is your greatest ally. Because he thinks like you, he fights like you, he is you. It was basically brainwashing, and it worked almost every time. So little Arminius, maybe 8, maybe 10 years old, gets ripped away from his family, taken from the forests of Germania, dropped into the middle of Rome, the biggest city in the world. Streets packed with people, marble buildings, gladiator arenas. A world completely alien to everything he had ever known. And here's the crazy part. He adapted. He didn't just survive Rome, he excelled. He learned Latin fluently. He studied Roman military tactics inside and out. He joined the Roman army. He fought in actual Roman wars. He put down rebellions for Rome. He was so good, they gave him Roman citizenship. They made him an equestrian. That's basically a knight, a rank of honor. Rome looked at Arminius and thought, this is a success story. This is what happens when you civilize a barbarian. But here's what they didn't understand. Arminius never forgot. He never forgot being taken from his family. He never forgot watching Roman soldiers march through his homeland. He never forgot the taxes, the disrespect, the crucifixions. He saw how Rome treated his people not as partners, but as property. And all those years in Rome, all that training, all those tactics he learned, he wasn't being civilized. He was taking notes. Now, his own brother Flavius went the other direction. Flavius stayed loyal to Rome, became a full Roman soldier, even lost an eye fighting for the empire. When these two brothers eventually met on opposite sides of a river during a later battle, Flavius called Arminius a traitor. Arminius called Flavius a slave. Same family, same childhood, completely different choices. That should tell you something about what kind of man Arminius was. So around 708 ID, Arminius gets transferred back to Germania. And now he's serving directly under, guess who, Varus? As a trusted advisor, a translator between Rome and the local tribes. Varus loved him, trusted him completely, had dinner with him, asked his opinion on military matters. Meanwhile, Arminius was quietly meeting with tribal chiefs in secret forest clearings, building an alliance, planning something that no one in Rome thought was possible. And there was one man who saw it coming, a chief named Segestus. He was Arminius's father-in-law, and he went to Varus multiple times. He said, Arminius is plotting against you. He's uniting the tribes. He's going to attack. And Varus looked at Segestus and basically said, that's ridiculous. Arminius is a Roman knight. He would never betray us. That was his second mistake. September 09 AD summer is ending. Varus and his army are getting ready to march from their summer camp back to their winter base near the Rhine. Standard procedure: pack up, march west. Get comfortable for the cold months. He's got 3 full Roman legions with him, the 17th, 18th, and 19th, plus cavalry and auxiliary troops, plus thousands of camp followers, women, children, merchants, servants. A moving city of 15 to 20,000 people. Right before they're about to leave, Arminius comes to Varus with news. He says there's a small rebellion in the northwest. Not a big deal, but handle it on the way back. I know a shortcut through the forest, and Varus trusts him. He doesn't send scouts ahead or verify the report. He doesn't question why Arminius suggests a different route through dense, unfamiliar forest. He just changes the plan. The Roman army starts marching. This isn't a tight combat formation, but a travel column, stretched over 9 to 12 miles. Soldiers, wagons, livestock, civilians. A long, thin line snaking through Europe's densest forests. The trees are so thick, sunlight barely comes through. Paths are narrow, ground soft and wet. It starts to rain. A downpour, turning dirt roads into rivers of mud. Wagons get stuck, soldiers slip. And the whole time, the forest is watching them. Hidden in those trees, on the hills, behind earthen walls. Thousands of Germanic warriors, waiting. And then, Arminius does something very simple. He tells Varus, let me ride ahead. I'll gather our Germanic allies to help. Varus says yes. Arminius rides out. But he's not gathering allies for Rome. He's giving the signal. Day 1. The first javelins came out of nowhere. One second, soldiers are cursing the mud. The next, spears flying from the trees. Arrows. Screaming. Men dropping before they know what's happening. The Germanic warriors didn't fight like Romans. They hit and ran. They attacked the column at its weakest points. They appeared from the forest like ghosts, struck hard, and melted back into the trees before the Romans could form a defensive line. And the Romans couldn't form up. In open ground, a Roman legion was almost unbeatable. Their formations, shields, discipline, a machine. But in a forest, in the mud, in the rain, with their columns stretched over miles, they were just men. Scared, confused, soaking wet men trying to figure out where the attacks were coming from. By the end of day one, hundreds were already dead. But the Romans were tough. They built a makeshift camp, dug trenches, set up defenses. They were hurt, but not broken. Not yet. Day two, they tried to push forward. They burned their wagons and extra supplies to move faster. But the forest just got worse, narrower, wetter, and the attacks didn't stop. Every few hundred yards, another wave, another ambush. Imagine walking through a hallway, and every door you pass, someone swings at you, and you can't see the next door coming. That's what this was. Mile after mile of constant, relentless violence. The Romans were elite soldiers, but they were exhausted, carrying 70 pounds of gear through knee-deep mud. Their shields were waterlogged, their formations kept breaking apart, and every time they stopped to regroup, the attacks came harder. Day 3. This is where it ends. The column reaches a narrow pass. On one side, a hill. On the other, a massive swamp. There's no room to maneuver, no room to form a battle line. And blocking the path ahead is an earthen wall. The Germanic warriors had built it weeks ago, because this exact spot was always where it was supposed to happen. The Romans tried to storm the wall. They throw everything they have at it. But it's no use. The warriors are raining javelins down from the high ground. The swamp traps anyone who tries to run. The forest blocks any retreat. And then the Germanic warriors come down from the hills, in full force, from every direction. What happens next isn't a battle. It's a massacre. Varus sees it. He watches his legions, the soldiers he was supposed to protect, getting cut down around him. He watches officers fall. He watches the eagle standards, sacred symbols of Rome's military pride, get ripped from the hands of dying soldiers. And he knows this is over. Varus draws his sword. Instead of letting himself be captured, instead of being dragged through some Germanic village as a trophy, he falls on it. His senior officers do the same. When the commander died, the last bit of fight died with him. The remaining soldiers heard what happened, and they just stopped. Some threw down their weapons. Some tried to run. Most were cut down where they stood. By the time the forest went quiet, somewhere between 15 and 20,000 Romans were dead. The survivors, and there weren't many, were either enslaved or sacrificed to the Germanic gods. The 17th, 18th, and 19th legions were wiped from existence. And here's the detail that always gets me. Rome never reformed those legions. Never. Those numbers were retired permanently. Like the Romans couldn't even bear to speak their names again. When the news reached Rome, it shattered the city. Emperor Augustus, this man who had conquered nations, built an empire, reportedly went into a kind of madness. Historians wrote that he would slam his head against the walls of his palace, screaming the same words over and over. Varus, give me back my legions. He stopped cutting his hair, stopped trimming his beard. In Roman tradition, that was the deepest form of mourning, and he did it for months. The most powerful man alive was completely undone. And here's what's wild. Rome didn't go back. Yes, a few years later, a commander named Germanicus led a revenge campaign into Germania. And when he found the battlefield, What he saw haunted him. Bones everywhere, bleached white by years of rain and sun, piled in heaps where the last stands happened, scattered along the paths where men tried to run, and nailed to the trees were skulls, Roman skulls, left there as trophies, as warnings. Germanicus buried the dead. He recovered one of the lost eagle standards. He won some battles. But Rome never again tried to make Germania a province. The Rhine became the border, and it stayed that way for the next 400 years. One battle, one betrayal, one forest, and it changed the map of Europe forever. Now, you'd think Arminius gets a happy ending, right? The hero who freed his people. The man who outsmarted the greatest empire in history. Yeah, not exactly. Remember Segestus? The chief who warned Varus. He was also Arminius's father-in-law, and he hated Arminius. So after the battle, Segestus did something unforgivable. He captured his own daughter, Arminius's wife, Thesnelda, while she was pregnant, and handed her over to the Romans. Let that sink in. A father gave his pregnant daughter to the enemy, out of spite for her husband. Thesnelda was taken to Rome. She gave birth to Arminius's son in captivity. That boy grew up as a Roman prisoner. Arminius never saw his wife or his child again. And it gets worse. After years of fighting, after defending his people's freedom, Arminius started to consolidate power. The other chiefs got nervous. They thought he was becoming too powerful, too ambitious, turning into the very thing they had fought against. So in the year 21 AD, just 12 years after his greatest victory, Arminius was murdered, not by the Romans, by his own people. Some sources say by his own family members. The man who freed his people was killed by the people he freed. And that is the part of this story they don't put on the monuments. There's this Roman historian named Tacitus, and he wrote something about Arminius that I think about a lot. He said Arminius challenged Rome not when it was weak, but at the height of its power, and that he fought undecided battles, but never lost the war. 20,000 soldiers walked into that forest, and empire's arrogance walked in with them. And the lesson that walked out is one that every powerful nation, every powerful person, should probably remember. The people you underestimate, the ones you think you've tamed, might be the ones who've been watching you the closest. All right, if this story hit you, drop a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next one.